A.G. Price, typical buy boat, built in 1928.
The boat was built in the 20s, and in the late 50s, 60s, it was converted to a yacht.
She's a Chesapeake buy boat, 72 feet long, 21-foot beam.
To my knowledge, Mob Jack and the Delvin K are the only remaining working buy boats.
They were the workhorse of the waterfront. They used them for everything.
So we finished all of these panels before the cupboard was put in, that way that everything could be fully sealed and waterproof before it was installed. These panels have a matte finish on them. All up here is not the matte finish, so this is just sanded. It has a few coats of gloss and it's sanded flat right now. From this project especially, I learned a lot with the matte varnish. You have to be very sure of yourself when you're working with matte varnish. Right. Once you brush it on, it begins to dry. It goes on glossy and it dries flat. Right. But if you were to touch it a second time, then it ruins it. It'll never dry matte. It'll look weird and chunky. So you have to put it on and just be so sure of yourself that it looks good and just walk away and let it dry. I met Earl's wife, Elizabeth, working odd jobs. She needed a mover to help her move offices. A few weeks later, she offered me a job. I had no idea what her business was at the time. I thought I was just going to be working in her office. She told me I would do payroll and invoices. When she gave me the address and I drove up to a shipyard, I was a little shocked. Monday I'd start the payroll, and by Monday afternoon I'd be done. So I needed something to do to fill the rest of the 40 hours. That's when I stumbled upon Ruben, and he put a paintbrush in my hand, and after a while I asked Todd if he could hire someone new to do the payroll because I just wanted to varnish. Learning from Ruben has been something. He requires a lot of patience, just like the varnish does. But he is a wonderful teacher. When I started here, everyone told me he was the best, including him about 100 times. But you know, it's true. After seeing it, and the place we work is covered in dust, and he finds a way to work around it. You see him, he wipes as he goes. All the tricks he's taught me. He teaches me things I'm not allowed to teach anyone else. But it's been wonderful. He's a really great mentor. I didn't really listen to reggae before I worked here, so now every time I hear it, it just brainwashes me into wanting to varnish, I guess. And I think everyone, like, if we were at home and we started listening to reggae, we would pick up tools and start working.
Right, exactly. Do I go? Sure. I'm drawing a blank. Right. Go back.
I don't know how charged they are.
This summer we've got 3 interns from IYRS, and they're doing their externship, which is, you know, about a month and a half long. We have Chase. He's working with Chet's team, specifically with Josh, on the interior area of Coastal Queen up forward in the accommodation space.
We're putting in a cleat for a bulkhead, for a structural bulkhead here. And we're gonna attach oak frames that'll go in between 2 pieces of plywood.
Okay, so yeah, so me and Josh have been, I've been helping him put up this structural wall in the forward hull of Coastal Queen, which will support bunks and kind of just the whole boat in general up in that area.
We've got 3 interns. They're doing really well. They've completed their first year at IYRS, and Khan is my favorite. I've been working with him the most. He's great. He had never used a power plane before. They learn the basics with hand tools basically on the first year, so they can understand the mechanics of the wood, how you work with the grain, you know, all that kind of thing. So they use hand tools. He's never used a power tool before, so the first day I had him under the boat, upside down over his head with a big router.
So I came to IYRS with no woodworking experience whatsoever, but I learned a lot during that first year, and definitely, yeah, the skills that I learned there, I'm definitely transferring them here. But also here, I'm also learning a ton of new skills that I think are extremely practical. The shipwrights here, they're fantastic. You know, they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. You know, they're very helpful and very nice, and definitely teach you a lot.
Crawling up and down 2 flights of stairs, then down into the boat, then the hops over all the floors. And Jesus, I'm tired by the time I get to the chain locker. This whole forepeak is complicated as hell. So we've got on top, outside above the deck, we've got the bowsprit, which sits on the deck and ties into this post. Forward of this post is the chain locker, which is going to be all framed out with starboard, so it's watertight. It's all going to be tight, very easy to clean. You just hose it out. We're going to have some drains coming out the bottom and out the side of the boat. But I have to be careful where I drill that hole, because Chris is building some limpets on the outside of the boat to divert water away from the bow thruster tube so it doesn't cavitate constantly.
So we're putting together a cowling that sort of fares the bow thruster with the rest of the boat. The water will flow on the outside of the cowling, hopefully directly across the bow thruster without stalling in here. This approach that we're using is very, very similar to how one would build a half-hull model. And if anybody's ever taken first-year calculus, you'll probably recognize this is quite similar to Simpson's rule, which is basically dividing up a complex curve into smaller bites and then taking each piece one at a time. Okay. So you'll see the center line for this is right here, and it runs this way. And so what you can see is on each piece, obviously it has 2 edges. This edge is the true cross-section. This edge is going to disappear and fare into this edge. The bow thruster is oriented in the bow such that if the flow of water along the hull is uninterrupted, it will actually hit the back of the bow thruster, the tunnel, which is quite common. So most of the time the solution is to build these sort of fairing foils around the front of the thruster and redirect the water out away from the hull momentarily. Very nice. Working at Macmillan, it's a little intimidating. It's you know, it's got a great reputation. When I first showed up here, the boat I was working on was Coastal Queen, and it's, you know, it's a Chesapeake Bay boat, and I know Chesapeake Bay craft pretty intimately from having worked down there. So it was nice to see that. It was a familiar face in a crowd, basically, and so it also allowed me just to jump right in and help, because I was quite familiar with the construction. Step outside, do those.
This deck beam was just no longer adequate. You know, the original deck beam, at some point they must have done a deck patch or something like that, but they had poured concrete into the deck beam to somehow reinforce it. I don't understand. Maybe they had the deck open at the time and they decided the best repair would be to pour some concrete into the top of the deck beam, which can often postpone rot. I don't want to say it'll stop rot, but the lime in the concrete can often kill the fungus that makes rot.
We've seen concrete used occasionally, and we've seen it in this boat. you know, earlier in the project, in the forward section of the keel, maybe even up in the gripe area. But I've never, in any boat, seen it be used in a deck beam before.
With this kind of precision in boat building, I would say you can use power tools for about 90% of the work, but almost every single piece that goes into a boat is going to have been touched by a hand tool at some point. The last 5–10% of every single piece, the final fitting, you know, the last shaving before the plank fits, that kind of thing, that's all hand tools. I think if you asked 100 boat builders, the overwhelming consensus would be that you have to be engaged with your work. You have to love what you do. Nobody just ends up as a boat builder, you know. You have to want to be a boat builder, and that means, you know, it consumes your thoughts while you're not working. It's, you know, you absolutely love every facet of every project, you know. That's it. Otherwise, what's the point? I mean, you're never going to get rich doing it. It will probably kill you at some point, you know, from but it's, honestly, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
We do it because we love the work and we love the challenge. We love the variety. Sitting in an office was not something I ever pictured myself doing.
Well, my dad got me into wooden boat building. As a kid, he would take me around to marinas, and we'd go find the oldest boat in the place, and just kind of dream of fixing it up and just having a good time doing that.
I don't know how I had imagined it, but it was exactly what I had hoped it would be. It's, you know, it's mentally demanding, it's physically demanding, it requires you to be a great problem solver, critical thinker, that kind of thing. So I find the work incredibly fulfilling.